and welcome to today's episode on the series Yoga Beyond Exercise Conversations to Heal and Lead Us into the New Paradigm of Peace, Harmony, and Prosperity. Today's guest is Clifton Carmody. Clifton is the founder of Mindful Leader. He is a coach and he is on a mission to help as many leaders as possible. He's a mindfulness practitioner with a background in Buddhism and a desire to help people. He has a kind heart with a lot of experience in business. I hope you enjoy today's talk as much as I did. Maybe you could talk to us about your personal journey, about how you evolved from, being somebody who is not mindful to somebody who is mindful. Kind of walk us through that a little bit.
Okay. Well, I wouldn't say I'm always mindful right now, but it is an aspiration. Um, I think a real defining moment for me was early, maybe 25 years ago. Yeah, 22 years ago. My, I had two little girls, and I was doing some work, and my wife at the time called me in for dinner, and I had to wait. I don't know. It was might be a whole 2 minutes for dinner to be served. So I just felt like I had a right to, this big. I'm 6'6", so I just take my hand and I kind of hit it on the table, not super hard, but 6'6" guy kind of hitting the table. The glasses, the silverware, everything jumps up. And it's me and the two girls at the table, and they look at each other. One's was 6 months old, and one's 6 years old, and they look at each other, and all of a sudden, everybody starts crying. My wife at the time looks at me with her hands on her hip, like, "Aren't you a big man? Do you feel good with yourself?" And I felt so small at that moment. I felt so like it was a shameful moment, right? And so I ended up the very next day, I picked up some books on meditation. Um, I wasn't, I was studied philosophy and religion, but I had come out of playing rugby, and I had played rugby all the way up to the national level. And there was a lot of things going on, and I was just like, "Rrr." And kind of, angry young man. I was, I kind of came from this kind of abusive childhood, had all kinds of stuff going on. So I just had a lot of angst. And when I realized I was becoming the monster, like I was the problem, I thought I needed to change. And at that point, I ended up, studying a little meditation, and that got me into Buddhism and yoga and, everything else. So that was that's the main thing. That's the main thing. That was like a real defining moment for me.
It was like an aha moment that you had in that. And then had you already thought about meditation?
No, no. I knew. I knew I needed therapy, meditation. I needed something. I was just like, I was a train wreck. I was basically, I was very driven. I was the youngest general manager in this upscale restaurant I was part of, and it was Morton's Steakhouse. So it's this, they have all this money, and it's very cool. And I dressed in my suits, and I thought I was so special. And it was just coming off of the success I had in rugby, and this whole thing. And I just realized I just I needed something else. Like it wasn't right. Like who I was wasn't right. And like literally, I was so driven, and I was so task driven and not people driven. This guy came in, and this is the third time he was late. Literally shows up for a pre-shift. I'm the general manager. I've got, I don't know, 15, 20 people in this pre-shift, and I'm having this talk with everybody. He comes in 2 minutes late, maybe 2 minutes late. And I ask him, I'm like, "Hey, can you go wait outside?" And everybody knew what was going on. I was going to fire this guy. And we're in Southern California. The guy's 2 minutes late. It's the traffic's so bad there. The fact that you're not 30 minutes late every single day, speaks volumes. And I just heartless. And it's shameful. It's this looking at life, and I'm happy where I am now, and I look back and I see all these things led me to where I am right now. But I realize it can be done. If somebody who was in business and acted that way could do what I did then, there's the promise, and this is what the promise is, right? It doesn't matter whether you're Christian, it's about being forgiven, or in Buddhism, in the Eastern religions, it's the lotus, the white lotus coming out of the mucky pond. You can change. And I'm not quite, the white lotus, but I'm working towards that. I'd like to be more mindful. I'd like to be able to, keep my promises. I want to be able to keep my calm, and I want to make sure that I have empathy and compassion for people, whether they work for me or they're my guests, my customers, or my wife, or whatever it is.
Yeah. That's really powerful. I mean, none of us are born perfect. We all
Yeah.
have a story. People can look at somebody from the outside and think, oh, they have everything. Oh, this, that. But we all are these, creatures that have these stories, and we're all the heroes in our own stories if we choose to be. And
Mhm.
but that is always available to us. I hear the phrase like giving, like empowerment, and like how we give away our power, and but the they is me, and I'm giving my power away to an aspect of myself that isn't um from the wholeness of loving.
Right.
It's interesting, like hearing your story. It's like I feel like it's my story.
The wholeness, I liked what you said there, the wholeness of your being. I mean, that's what integrity means. It means one, right? So if you're in integrity, and it means, I think we all have these values, whether we go to the church or the temple on Saturday or Sunday. How we live our life the rest of the week is very important. And if we so desire to go to church, and we like hearing these stories, and we read the spiritual books, and we like the Dalai Lama, and we like the Pope, and whatever it is, if we have that, right? If you have that aspect to you, then you really want to carry that on, the whole rest of your life. You want to be more Christ-like, be more Buddha-like. You want to practice that, and that is being whole. Otherwise, it's this kind of bizarre situation where, one day you're this person and the other day you're this person. So that's being whole, and in integrity, being one, right?
Yeah, for sure. And as a mindful leadership coach, how would you take somebody who has that will and desire, no matter where they're at? How do you start with somebody who has that will and desire? Because, right, you have to have the will and desire to change or to be whole. I mean, I feel like people that I come in contact with, because of, what I do and who I am, people are constantly like, I can't do, like, I can't meditate. I mean, come on, both of us, if we had a dime for every time we heard that, we'd be like the richest people on earth.
Uh-huh.
But people say, oh, I can't do that. But they want the shift, or they wouldn't even bring it up.
Right.
So, like, what I love about what you're doing in the world is you call your company Mindful Leader. So they know when they're coming to you that there's going to be a shift.
Uh-huh.
So, but how what is that moment when, like, how do people get to that place where they they know that something needs to change? And then how do we get to that place where we're not making up excuses anymore? Like, what have you seen in your work?
Um, you said something at the beginning of that, which was very telling. You have to want it. If you don't see that there's a problem, maybe up to that point where I slammed the table, I didn't see I had a problem. I was justified. Like, why? I'm so self-important, and I've got this big ego, and I've got to do this. And if you go through life that way, you're not going to see that you need to change, right? But if you see that you want to become, more empathetic, more compassionate, more effective, really, that's what leadership's about: taking care of the people that actually do the work. Because normally the leaders, their job is just to get everybody going, right? Have the vision and communicate that vision, and elicit the most trust and creativity out of the staff. So there's two aspects. Sometimes people come and it's more of a transactional thing. They have, well, I have this problem. I've got to, reduce labor, reduce food costs, or whatever the situation is, and they oftentimes through coaching and through discussing the different aspects of their personality, they realize that it's their personality that's getting in the way of their staff doing the job. And usually there might be an epiphany during the process, and they go from being transactional. I've come to you, Clifton, to solve this business problem, to transformational through coaching, through the coaching process. And through my own self-awareness, development of self-awareness, I am now a different person. I'm a person who can accomplish not only the original transactional thing I came to you with, but other situations. So that's one aspect. That's this transactional to transformational uh, side that happens. And then some people are already in the process. They might have had their hand hitting moment on the table. They might have barked at, one of their favorite employees, and they might have lost a vice president that was, the superstar of the company who got so much stuff done. And now the owner's like, I've got this founder syndrome, and I just got to learn how to get over it. Um, and they already know, right? They already know what needs to be done. So it's more of a guide. And I think mindfulness isn't the goal in and of itself. Mindfulness is the tool to get everything else you want. If you're mindful of what your goal is going into a meeting, if you're not going to get caught up in the emotions or the drama, or the fear factor going on. If you're just mindful of, okay, I've got a goal in this meeting, I'm going to do this, um, you're you're going to hit that goal more often. If you're mindful of your personal goals, if you're mindful of the person you want to be. um, no, how many people, they would never like cheat on their partner or whatever, but then all of a sudden they get caught up, they get drinking, they get talking about stuff they probably shouldn't be talking about. It's a slippery slope, and you just start doing that, or you justify business transactions a little shady, and you're like, well, kind of like everybody does it. Well, it's slippery. But if you're mindful and you really look at, like, who do I want to be, who do I want to show up as, my highest self, how's my highest self being expressed right now? That's really the key. Now, I think that's the key. Being mindful is the key to beginning the journey, right? It's just like, what's going on here? Let's just figure out what is. And through that, you become more compassionate, more empathetic, more solution focused rather than drama focused, right? So,
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's such an important point, that mindfulness is a tool. And to define on some level, like, what you want as your goal. Like, I want to be happy. I want to feel loved. I want to feel success. I want to, I find it has a lot to do more to do with emotions than it has to do with like the external manifestation.
right.
Because you can have all the money in the world and not be joyful or happy or feel abundant, so to speak. So, what are mindful techniques that you use to help people access their higher selves?
It's being mindful, is remembering, right? Like, who do you want to be? What are your goals? What is the solution you're trying to solve? So there's the classic meditation, right? So there's meditation is just a way of seeing things and of slowing down and realizing like what your emotions are. Your emotions could be driving you, or you can be driving who's driving the bus here. Is it my, the monkey mind that's all over the place, the reptilian part of your brain that's just like fight or flight or freeze, or is it this kind of prefrontal cortex type of thinking where you're you're looking at a situation and you're in control of the situation and you're not letting your hormones that are racing through your body control the situation. So first step is always, meditation. If you can get meditate, and like you said, if we had a dime for every time somebody said, well, I can't meditate, right? Like here I am, I teach meditation, and then my wife says that she's, I'm not like you. I got too many things going on in my mind. Like they've been saying this for 2,500 years. Like people can't do that. So first step is work on that. Work on that because sometimes people don't even know how much their brain is playing around. Maybe I'm talking to you and I'm trying to talk to you and I'm thinking about a list I have, or I'm thinking about, is my hair okay? Or, like whatever the deal, I'm not focused, right?
Mhm.
So by being mindful, you start seeing how even in the silence of your own room with your eyes closed, how your brain can play these tricks on you, or keep you busy. So that's the first step. Then there's um, centering techniques um, as you go through your day during transitions, just being mindful of, okay, I'm going to go into this meeting. It's a difficult meeting. I really want the best outcome. I want a better performance from my employee. I don't want to beat him up. I've got to make sure that I approach this in a different way than my emotions are saying, like, why didn't you meet your numbers? Instead of coming in that way, you want to come in a way that is actually solution oriented, and let's figure this out together. And so sometimes it's something as simple as a breathing technique, as just as you walk in the door. There's this wonderful teacher, and her name escapes me, but she was in charge of the mindfulness program um, at Amazon. And she would have this 5-3-1 system, and it would be like, okay, right before you do something, just take 5 deep, slow breaths. Think of 3 things you're grateful for at that minute, and think of one really positive thing that you're going to share, at your next meeting or whatever else. And so that's a neat technique I've stolen and slightly modified. And I think that that's it. It's just really little things throughout the day. Do you set timers on your phone to take a few deep breaths? Do you talk about what you want to be grateful for? Do you want to just think of positive things? So there's just a bunch of little techniques through the day, whatever it is. It's just stopping and breathing. It's usually one of the best ideas. So
You just reminded me as you were saying all that, that what I've noticed, what's going on right now in our time, November 2020, is that people are watching a lot of television, a lot of news.
mm,
And I think it's important that we talk about like being careful about what information we put into our minds, because you can fight a losing battle there. So could you talk about that a little bit?
yeah, this is something I've had a problem with different times, in my life. Like whatever your political persuasions are, they're very polarized these days. So no matter which side of the fence you're on, there's a lot of anxiety, right? So the more you think about an outcome that you have no control over, that's helplessness, right? So one of the main things about being in control is feeling like you're in control. And when you scroll through your news feed on your iPhone, or when you're watching these images repeatedly, these negative images, they that is what you think about. You can't not think about those things. You just can't. You just, whatever you feed your senses, right? Whatever you're feeding your senses, that's what you're going to become, right? You feed yourself, junk food, you kind of feel like you've been eating junk food, right? You eat good food, healthy food, you feel better. How many people go out in nature and they're like, I really need to go out in nature more. And you look around and it's just like this beautiful feeling. And then what's the feeling when you walk into, your messy house versus your clean house? Like all these things we know, like you feed your senses. And if you want to keep a positive state of mind, if you want to be upbeat and positive, you can't fill yourself with it, especially news. News is sensational just to make sure that people watch. They got to tell you, like, not only how bad it is, but put a tiny bit of a spin on it to make it even sound worse. And so I think one of the keys to everything is be very careful, be informed. I'm not saying, don't watch the news and lock yourself, but be informed, be intelligently informed. Just don't watch your far left or far right news channel. There's a lot of different places that tell where the mainstream media lies on the political spectrum. Try to watch a couple of different things so you can understand, especially if you are one way or the other way. Try to understand the other side because they're people and they're part of the divine plan and they're part of your reality. And if it's really all fun and good to talk about love, and we're all in this kind of yoga world where we're these kind of hippie, modern day hippies, and that's really nice. But if you can't have love for the people that you don't like, then it's not really love. It's just like it's more transactional. Oh, I really like you because you agree with me. So, but those people over there, they're problem people, right? So use news wisely. Use news to understand what those people over there are thinking and those people over there, and just try to be more empathetic towards everybody, more compassionate. So
I mean, that's how I feel. But that takes a lot of awareness, or like we've been talking about mindfulness, to kind of step back and not absorb yourself into the situation. It's like keeping a more broad perspective so that you can, see where your role is it here. I think you brought up a good point just now about love. And in your coaching, I'm curious about how, because I believe that you can't love another unless you truly love yourself. It's like
mm,
the oldest saying in the and it's got to be the oldest saying in the universe, but I
uh,
believe it like wholeheartedly. And because I know I can fake it. We talk about spiritual bypassing
mhm,
in the spiritual world, and it's like I get confused about what gaslighting is and all these words, but what I do know is that if I'm talking smack about myself, like to myself, then like there's no way that what
mm.
comes out of this being is going to be have any sort of high frequency or vibration to it, will be worth listening to. So could you talk about like self-love and that aspect of leadership?
I think it's really important because I think a lot of people come there. There's two people that stand out. One is Blake Bauer. Has written a couple of good books, and he had gone through a lot of traumatic experiences young, and um, he realized you have this feeling just like I did when slapping the table. That moment, there's that moment where you just want to crawl and hide, right? Like you don't want to be seen, and you carry those things. I've done things 20 years ago that still to this day just oh, I feel so sick of myself for even thinking that I could do that. Um, but if I can't look back at who I was 20 years ago, 30 years ago, and forgive that person who didn't know any better, and just say, okay, well, it wasn't the greatest thing, but look at progress. How am I going to be able to truly love my partner and forgive her if she does something, or my daughter, or whatever else? Um, and it's tough, but I think a lot of times as leaders come into their role, um, they're driven. There's something that drives them. There's something they've got to prove to themselves, to the world, whatever. There's something about that. Oftentimes, when I work with people, I realize there's this little part of them that they think they're a big fraud. Like, how did I get to be the CEO of this company? Or how, like, they think they're fake, right? It's like, no, this is real life. This isn't dress rehearsal. You're the CEO. You got to be the CEO because you deserve to be the CEO. Whether you look at it from a real mundane thing, like, oh, you got this business going, you got some financing going, and here you are, or divine providence, like, you were just tapped to do this. No matter how you look at it, this is where you are right now. And don't, you know, accept where you are and think about getting better and accept and forgive yourself, because if you can't forgive yourself, you're not going to be able to forgive other people. And it's just going to self-love, like you said, as much of a cliche it is, it's serious. I met Blake Bauer once. I was working at this retreat center, and he he came in, and I was, I'm still, yeah, I'm already into yoga, I'm already meditation, I'm already doing all this stuff, but this whole self-love thing, I'm like, that sounds a little, woo-woo. But I realize, there's, how many of us like can think back to something we did when we were 6, and we're like, God, I can't believe I did that, or whatever. And it's like, you were 6. Like, I mean, that's an extreme example, but it's easy to understand when you look at your 6-year-old self. Like, that's just a little boy, or that's just a little girl, and they needed love, or they needed something, and they didn't understand how the world works, and they, whatever. And of course, if I say 6 years old, then everyone's like, oh yeah, yeah, well, I can love and forgive my 6-year-old self. Well, what the hell's the difference between that and something you did 10 years ago? You're a lot different person from that also. It's look in your mirror, love yourself, look in the mirror, and don't look at, my mustache that's kind of all shaped funny today, and oh boy, I'm going to be on this program. That's the real thing that happened. And I was like, it is. It's the way it is. It's just how it is. And I'm perfect in my imperfection, right? And it's really, if people have a sense of the divine, like, they will look at their life, and if you can convince them and you can talk to them through conversation, that things are perfect the way they are, like wherever you are. And that sounds cliche too, but in all reality, that's how you can also go back and love yourself and love your own imperfections. So I think it's very important. I think it's super important to love yourself. Otherwise, you're doing everything for the wrong reasons. You know.
I think that's the most important aspect about being a human, is to constantly seek. You said it actually earlier, remembering who we are. Like, we're here, we're created, like something created us, and I always tell people, like, you're here, you're created, you're worthy. Like, that's enough. And then
Mhm.
the adventure begins. It's like, oh, once you like stake your claim, like, you're like, yes, I'm here in this body, whatever that means. And then start asking questions, and I used to ask them externally until I realized that the answers, really, I just needed to direct them inward and then watch them express themselves in the external world. And then it becomes this like moment to moment adventure. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what the next moment is going to bring me. And that's exciting. I remember Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, he had a phrase that it was about like jumping off the cliff. Like, don't worry, just jump off the cliff, and there's no worries because there's no ground. It's like this infinite fall.
Uh-huh.
You're not
Uh-huh.
going to fall and hurt yourself. It's getting back to the nature of being. And I think that's what's so important about mindfulness, is like, we're mindful of the actual creation that we are. and taking a minute or 10 or 45 a
Right.
day to tap into that, and to just be still in that with no agenda.
Yeah. I think that's right. I think earlier you said, well, what are some mindfulness techniques? One of the things I try and work with people is to be more curious
Mm.
and be more curious. If you walk in to a meeting and you sit down with your team and you're like blah 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 and you start telling everybody what to do because you heard about a problem or whatever, and you're not curious, then you're not going to get all the information. If you don't ask more questions, if you don't open up a safe space, it's not going to be more curious because how is the divine manifesting? You don't know what's happening. This whole world's a miracle, right? The whole experience is a miracle. Just have that you know, what is that Rumi saying? I sold my cleverness for bewilderment, or something like that. And it's like just like the beauty of everything and the unknown, right? Look at things for the first time, beginner's mind, right? So I totally agree with you on that.
I think it would be fun if you wouldn't mind, like sharing some of your stories from clients, obviously without naming them. But like, I'd be so curious to hear like a story about like one that sticks out in your mind of like somebody that came to you with an issue and like had this like huge transformation. And the reason that I feel like it would be beneficial to anyone listening to this is because that's, I think, what defines what I call the new paradigm or the new earth. It's this transition from transactional, like what I can get or what I have to deliver, to like a personal transformation, that the thing that happens inside of us, that then it's, instead of being transactional, it's like what you were saying earlier, it's more like in service of, and it's like a different perspective. It's like you still have to get your delivery, you still got to order the food and the you got to
Yeah.
pay your bills and all that, but we're accessing that part of being that is like the foundation for all of this other stuff to happen. So I think that would be kind of cool, if you don't mind, if there's one
Yeah.
that sticks out.
Well, I think some of the most telling the paradigm shifts have been from people that were kind of forced into a coach. Yeah, okay, so there's two types of coaching. People come and they look for a coach, and then sometimes there might be some, you can be rewarded by your company. Oh, we're going to give you so much money to go out and get coached. And then there's some people that are like, okay, you need some help, so we're going to set you up with a coach or whatever the case might be. And oftentimes, those are the people. There is either nothing, absolutely no transformation because there's an unwillingness, or they get involved in the conversation and the relationship, and there is this big change. So they come to it like, okay, like yeah, I'm a hothead, but I get stuff done, so that's who I am, and blah blah blah. And in this one particular case, this guy was. Um, his supervisor thought it was a good idea for him to get into coaching and everything else, but he had a few other things going on. He was recently divorced. He was There was rumors about maybe he was dating on the job, people he shouldn't be dating. And he didn't really, when he came, he didn't want to be part of it. He was kind of forced to. But then as we opened up about a few things, we realized he wasn't doing what he wanted to do. He had no desire to be working in the industry he was working in. He he just was he wasn't happy. And this is kind of a slippery slope for me because I'm being paid by the company, but I'm working with this individual who comes out like he doesn't even like working in the same industry. But what ends up happening is through some back and forth and some talking, he ended up deciding he was going to change his industry, and he ended up leaving. He kept coming to me, but all of his bad behavior, the behavior where he snapped at people, the behavior where he was dating and he shouldn't have been dating, all of that changed as he realized who he wanted to be. And as he was being more mindful, as he was realizing, he would get into these conversations, or he'd go out after work and have those cocktails. He realized what was going on. He'd be talking to the secretary, and then they'd go out somewhere, and he's like, I caught myself that time. He said, I caught myself. I realized that, of course, it's innocent in the beginning. Oh yeah, we're just going to go out, and we'll go out with some people, but it's the intention that only you know where you're coming from. And when he realized that a lot of his problems were just like, just, well, I'm just going to put my foot in the pool, I'm not going to get wet. But if you're that close to the pool, you might slip in, right? And so what ended up happening with him is he ended up getting into, going to graduate school. He ended up doing everything that he wanted to do, and he had met a beautiful wife. He has a beautiful baby, and all of this came from this idea that he was this, like young manager who was new and role, doing everything wrong. And he transformed into somebody who was doing, one, what his heart wanted, right? Like he just didn't
Mm.
want to be doing that. He didn't want to be doing it. And two, he wasn't mindful enough to see that when he got close to the edge that he could fall in. And once he slowed down enough, once there's that time between stimulus and response, you, you elongate that. And when I say elongate it, it could, we're talking seconds or milliseconds or whatever else, just enough time to not respond with your emotions. Oh yeah, she asked me to go have a drink, I'm going to go, right? Or, I'm upset with someone, so I'm going to bark at them. If I just have a second, just have a millisecond to slow down and think, how do I want to respond to this? And so for him, it was real good, because as soon as he got a little bit more mindful, like his life completely changed. And really, that's when it came to him that, like, I don't even really like being here, and this isn't what I want to be doing. It's not. So I think that was one of the best. And I've seen that kind of story play out in other people. And oftentimes the most dramatic shifts come from people that come into it in a very transactional way, and but they're open to the process, and it's turns out to be transformative. So
Mm. How beautiful. Ah, I love that. I feel like that old paradigm is crumbling. People, you go to college and then we have all this pressure, to get a job, especially because, you get out of college and grad school and everything, and you have this huge amount of debt and you have to start paying it back, like within
mm-hmm.
like 6 months or something. So it puts this pressure on people to like work and to do, and then your life starts, and then you start spending more money and more debt and all of this. And I feel like we're in a time now where people are waking up that they don't have to sacrifice. They don't have to sacrifice just to make money to survive, that actually doing what you love to do
Mm-hmm.
and tapping into that naturally gives you access to like abundance in a way that you couldn't have even imagined
Yeah.
before.
Yeah, I see that, and I think this is also a generational thing.
Mm.
So as we look at millennials right now, right, they're coming up, and there's a lot of idealism within the millennials. But what happens is, Marilyn Tam, she's a conscious leader, brilliant. She says workers are looking for a different type of environment. They need organizational leaders that understand how managing people, uh, the way it was done, in the 90s is not how it's effective now. People are living to a higher level. They're not, money isn't the thing, that kind of security. They already feel really secure with things. What they want is purpose. They want meaning. They want passion in their lives. And I truly believe that this is why it's so perfect right now. This is the time. Like, this is the time. We have, BLM is going on, this last summer. We've had the Me Too movement, the last couple of years. We've had these things that are going on where there is an inequality and an equality that is coming about. So as far as things like conscious leadership, mindful leadership, one of the most important parts of those is working collaboratively, right? Like, what do you want? What do you want, Julie? How can I help you? How can this position, in this factory, putting this screw on this, how can we serve you better? How can we most serve you to where you feel like there's some sort of purpose, and you have some sort of purpose, and you have some meaning in these 8 hours? Because work doesn't have to destroy us. Work can be a way that we can achieve our fullest self, our most divine self. Like, that's the idea behind this. Like, we're just getting more refined. It's just going to be a more beautiful life. There is no more such thing as work-life balance. You just work, and as long as we have cell phones, people can contact you and everything else. So let's make work meaningful, and let's really, live from your heart. Because if you're living from your heart and you're doing work from your heart, and your company takes care of your heart, then you want to end up, you want to stay there. And it's just, let's face it, it's a better life.
And you mentioned integrity, which that is my word of the year, is like, or my lifetime. It's just the word that keeps popping up. Like, out of all the sayings or different things, is like integrity is like, what does that mean to me? And like, how am I going to live from that? And then just steering the ship, like, in, on a moment to moment basis of like, what is that? And that's what mindfulness is, right? It's tuning into that at that level.
Right. And that's, and being in integrity. And like we were saying before with your, this paradigm shift, like, I don't want to work my whole life, and then I get to move to Florida when, I'm broke down. I like that, and I like that idea. It's really seeing the beauty of every single day. I My wife and I talk sometimes, like, oh, I want you to retire, and I want, this, we've got to do this. And I'm like, I'm always going to want to work. I want to just take care of people. I want to share this knowledge. I want to coach people. This is retirement to me. This now, maybe I would want to live on the beach, but the overall, like, and that might come soon too. But I really think that being in integrity with who you are, and making it one, you don't want to have your work life and your professional life, your church life, your personal party life. You have all those different hats. Um, I've lived on a couple of retreat centers, and one of the one of the challenges when you live in a retreat center is everybody knows each other, right? So you're working and living together. Like, everybody is working and living together. And it's not like you're living in the same rooms or anything, but it doesn't matter. Like, everyone's business. When people are having bad days, good days, when they're hooking up with people, everything else. And it's very raw, and things come out, right? Like, you don't get to hide. And I realized in my, at some previous times in my life, I hid. I was one person at home. I was one person when I went to the Buddhist center. I was another person when I went to work, and I wore my suits and I thought I was so cool. And, like, whatever the case was. And there's something about when you come together, and it's just a certain amount of wholeness, and you're living in your own integrity, that life's beautiful. Life's just more beautiful. There's less stress. There's less, oh, I've got to worry about what I did last night because my coworkers don't normally see that. They see me as this. No, just be the same person. Be the same person. Being mindful of who you want to be, because a lot of times people just forget, their emotions and their hormones, and the amygdala starts sending these, hormones out, and you get all stressed, and you bark at someone, or the emotions of happiness, and you're attracted to someone you should be attracted to, all kinds of stuff. So, just being mindful and being aware, and having, just a little bit of time before stimulus and response, so you can control the situation a little bit, use your divine power to bring about what you want, to create your reality, right? So I think the integrity is it's just being one, and I think mindfulness helps you stay on the course essentially.
I think it's the most important thing that we need to do for ourselves is to be mindful, to watch ourselves, to really tune in to our bodies and our minds and our spirits. Even as a spiritual person, it's so funny. It's just another paradigm. Like you can be as screwed up as any other way. It doesn't matter. You can call it whatever you want. I have definitely seen that. But the real work is when you are turning your eyes, so to speak, your senses on yourself and taking that full responsibility. I remember I say this all the time. I just said it maybe on another interview the other day, but I was like, out of all the scriptures I studied and I don't know how many hundreds of hours meditating and study of Buddhism and yoga, my intention was always the same. It was just that it could have come in many different ways. It just came through that. But there was this one phrase in Tibetan, Hluksum Numdak, that came through that whole experience, and it means 100% personal responsibility. And it's like, that's what I would hope that the conversation with all of us is like to be responsible for ourselves because that's how we can be true leaders, for ourselves in our own lives. It can be as simple as being the leader of your own life or your
Hmm.
family
Yeah.
or your community, your business. It's like it just stems from that, but that personal responsibility and really making that that important part of the integrity.
Yeah, that's it. And I oftentimes say that, like you said, do you work with business people or personal? Like how, I do personal coaching, executive coaching, but in reality, like I always say, like you are, my wife's the leader in the house. Like this is where you take your shoes off. This is, she explains how everything works, right? And everybody is a leader to a certain extent. And the most important thing is leading yourself to where you want to be and taking personal responsibility. It's eyes it's eyes on yourself to see like what you are actually doing, and then instead usually we have eyes on ourselves because of our self-importance, and we have eyes on others because they're not important or they're making mistakes or the world is coming at me. And then it's like, okay, well, let's flip that script, right? So now let's realize I'm creating my world. If I wasn't there at that moment, that guy wouldn't have yelled at me. Let me just kind of switch all this around. And then also understanding, where am I coming from? What is my intention here? What am I doing? Like what is the purpose of my life, right? And the purpose of my life is I'm going to go out and I want to be able to take care of other people. So I need to watch other people. I need to watch you. I need to watch for nonverbal communication from you. I need to look at my employee and see, oh, they're acting a little bit differently, or their sales have been down for the last 2 quarters. There's something different going on with them. Like that's the whole idea. Like eyes out to see how you can affect your world and take care of others, and eyes in to see like what is your intention. Like this is my world, and I'm creating it every day. So 100% responsibility.
Love that. It's not always easy to get there. I feel like for some, it's that paradigm shift that's happening right now. It's like there was a ceiling, a roof, and the roof has been blown off the building. And now it's like anything is possible. It's such an amazing transformational time in for mankind. I think we're for sure in an evolutionary process. And I'm so excited because I love business. I love being an entrepreneur. I think for me, it's my artwork, it's
Yeah.
creative, it's my outlet. I love serving, and I'm not afraid of abundance, and I'm not afraid to make mistakes, because that's part of the growing and expanding, and you said it perfectly before, like that forgiveness that you have to have for yourself. But that's what I see this new paradigm as, is like a place of just acceptance and growth and learning and expanding.
I fully agree, and I think we live in this just a remarkable time. Like in our lifetime, we think about just how computers have changed so much, right? Like just in our lifetime, like we went from maybe watching three network stations to a billion cable stations. Like so much has changed. It's really created this thing where there was fear-based leadership, top down. I'm the expert and everybody else doesn't know. And so much has happened and there's been so much growth. It's a real natural evolution to move into more of a conscious leadership where no longer is it just the shareholders that the company executive is responsible to. It's all the stakeholders. It's the employees. It's the customers. It is the shareholders. And you still need to have business, like you said, like that is our way of contributing. We just money is this just form of energy, whatever we call the money, whether it's a Bitcoin money or dollar money or, food that somebody's, it's just energy. All this energy is changing. And the idea is so much is possible right now. There's so many wonderful ideas. And, we talked about living in integrity and having not just work, right, but making work like a part of your passion and making sure that work doesn't take over your home and making sure that everything is all together. I saw recently a Jimmy Kimmel interview with Obama, and he talked about making sure every night 6:30 he was home for dinner with as a president with his kids, and he'd go from being in the Situation Room and talking about all this military, the stuff that's going to change the world, and then he would get home, and then his kids would be talking about this boy at school and that they have a crush on or doesn't like, and it just brings everybody down to reality. And making sure that you have that balance, like that's what kept him like doing what he's doing. And if you come from a place of service and you create your life in a way where it's serving, I've got to put a nut on a bolt. Well, I'm going to put that nut on the bolt just right. I'm going to make sure that that doesn't come off for that person that's counting on that nut and bolt to be together on the other side. And this is what it's all about. And I truly believe that if people can understand that their role, whatever their role is, you become somebody who takes care of other people. When you own that relationship, one, you feel better. Two, I think that's really one of the keys to, you know, this whole new paradigm shift. Like that's what people are seeing. The boss comes in, he's no longer the expert. He comes and tells everyone what to do. He sits down and has a collaborative meeting where he's checking in with people and finding out where they're coming from and how best to solve this. So um, I think there's some momentum, and I, the risk of sounding a little woo-woo for the business guy, right? But I definitely think that there is an evolution going on, and if there wasn't an evolution, I don't even think I could have a business called Mindful Leader. It's just, so I'm just hoping this keeps going and we just start, we can see leadership, a certain lack of effective leadership has caused a lot of challenges in this country and around the world. And if we can have leaders that are, more conscious, more awake, more self-aware, I think that's going to create a situation that we have a better world and, we continue our evolution.
That is my sentiments also. And I am so grateful for the work that you're doing in the world. I had a lot of creativity energy going through during our talk. So I cannot imagine doing anything else. So thank you for showing up in your life. Thank you for being here on this during this summit. And I wish you the best in your endeavors, not only for you, but all the people that you come in contact with.
And I thank you, Julie, for being on this and doing this. The world needs this. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.